Marinaro, the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal talk on this Friday. You're watching live on YouTube. You're watching live on Twitter. Hello. I was at CF Montreal's practice earlier today at Centre Nutrire. So was my partner in crime, Jeremy Filosa of 98.5 FM and EMFC Radio. We have a lot to talk about. A 1-0 loss in Montreal a couple of nights ago versus DC United. And now they're crossing their fingers and hoping that DC United will do them a favor tomorrow night versus Pumas. Sean Rea, we talked to you about being in the doghouse. His punishment, unfortunately for him, continues. It's not like the team is better off. We're going to talk about that as well. The team can't score. Half the games they've played this season, they haven't scored a goal. Half, I said. A player, an important player on this year's team is getting interest from a couple of other teams in the MLS. That was a scoop from Vincent Détouche. We're going to talk about that as well. A player, a newly acquired player who Jeremy and I had a chance to see earlier this morning at practice. We took images of him, video, a picture, and his signing with the team was made official moments after. I also tipped you off about a CF Montreal player being loaned. That is now a fait accompli. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, the team actually made that official as well. We're going to talk about this and so much more. We're talking CF Montreal. It's the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. Follow us on our Twitter handle at SickPod, CFMTL. Filosa will join me in just a second. I'm Marinaro.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. CF Montreal Talk.
Here's the chance. They've got the goal. Absolutely incredible. Cameron Porter delivers the goal to send Montreal Impact into the CONCACAF Champions League semi-final.
The sickest CF Montreal podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Jeremy Filosa joining me right now. Jeremy, what's going on?
How's it going, Tony?
Going very, very well. Look, I know the loss versus DC United was a couple of nights ago right here in Montreal, but let's look back on it if we can. The starting lineup, this is what it looked like, Jeremy. All right, Sirois was your goalkeeper, of course, with a 3-man back line. Camacho with Waterman to your right and Corbeau to your left. In front of the back line, it was Choinière and Piet. At right wing back, it was Herrera. At left wing back, it was Lassiter. And it was Duke in behind Opoku and Ofer. 3-4-1-2 formation for Hernan Losada's side with Ketterer and Pantemis on the bench, which, by the way, it caused a lot of commotion on social media. It's mandatory rules for League Cup that there are 3 keepers that are on the game sheet. Other subs, Hamdi, Miljevic, Toy, Ibrahim, Zachary Broguillard, Nathan Saliba, Lassi Lapalainen, Gregory Campbell, Robert Thorkelson, and Jules Anthony Vilsain. Jeremy, the same problem that has plagued them pretty much all season long. They can't score. Everyone's trying to put their finger on it. Is it the strikers? Is it the 10? Is it the style of play? Is it the way they play? It's probably a combination of everything.
Yeah.
But once again, in every other game, they haven't scored a goal.
That's it's unbelievable. I mean, Tony, I understand this is soccer, and a lot of people say, well, they don't score a lot of goals in soccer, but come on.
They do in MLS. They do in MLS.
Yeah, 50% of the games, you don't score goals. And, you know, as you mentioned, it's a recurring problem because a lot of times when you look at the situation in Montreal is that if they don't score the first goal, that's when they're unable to come back. Other teams have, you know, they have the blueprint on Montreal. They know that if they play to score early or they score the first goal and they close it up, Montreal simply does not have the skill set to be able to break down a low block, and that's when they get themselves in trouble. They did get some scoring chances. I think there were 5 shots on target, if I'm not mistaken, in this last game. But again, it's not sufficient, and it's a problem. It's a problem. They're not able to find the back of the net. There were some opportunities here and there, But, in many of the games that they played in Montreal, Tony, they were very opportunistic. If you look back at the games, even last week, the game against Pumas, I think they had 4 shots on target. 2 of them were goals. So extremely opportunistic, but you can't count on that week in and week out. It's not going to work out. It's not going to happen. You need volume, and they don't have that right now.
They have a winning record in Montreal. They probably thought it was going to propel them in these Leagues Cup. They had a beautiful opportunity, like you said, to play 2 home games, one of them versus Pumas and the other one, of course, versus DC United. You win those games, you can continue to play. You can continue to play at home. You can continue to advance. And I know a lot of CF Montreal fans were crossing their fingers and hoping that there probably was going to be an appointment in Leagues Cup action versus Lionel Messi and Inter Miami, which probably would have taken place somewhere in about like the 15th of August or so. Look, they're going to need some help now to advance, because DC United will play Pumas at home tomorrow night. And they're going to need a DC United win, which is probable, Jeremy. It's probable, but at the same time, DC United has already advanced. They don't have to put their pedal on the metal if they don't want to.
No, exactly. If they pick up a point, losing a shootout, for example, they still win the group. DC is going to want to avoid Philadelphia in the next round. That's for sure. Montreal's only opportunity to advance would be as a second place if Pumas loses. Could be in regulation, could be in a shootout, whatever. Montreal would be second and would be then forced to travel to Philadelphia if they were to get there. Honestly, Tony, I don't think it's going to happen. I saw the game against Pumas. I saw the game against DC. Even though the game is in Washington, I favor Pumas in this game. I think they will come through. They'll find a way to win this game. And unfortunately, I think it'll be over for CF Montreal. And if it is, it'd be a huge disappointment, Tony, because as you just mentioned, what an opportunity squandered. I mean, you have this chance to be playing at home for so many straight elimination games, get a city excited about something, generate more money for the owner, generate excitement for the players, for the fans. And now you've left everything in the hands of 2 other teams, which you have no control over. So, if they lose this, if they get eliminated tomorrow night, Tony, they will be 3.5 full weeks without playing a game, which is obviously not ideal because you're going to lose your conditioning. It might give players like Kyoto the time to come back, but it's far from being ideal. The least that you wanted to do would have been at least to advance to the elimination round. Then you'd say, you know what, we have 2 weeks off, but now it's probably going to be a pretty long break.
I'm going to take it a step further. If they get eliminated tomorrow night with a win by DC United, the other area in which it hurts is that this team was starting to gain some momentum at the box office with ticket sales, with people showing up to the stadium. And when you're advancing in Leagues Cup, you have a couple of members of the media who probably don't normally talk about you that will. You have a couple of cameras that don't usually show up but did. And all of a sudden, if you get eliminated, that little bit of momentum that you had, it's done. And the next time you're going to play is going to end up being the 20th of August. A couple of members of the media are going to come around probably on the 19th, the day before or whatever it is, show that they're there to work. Mind you, nobody's really working all that hard today. You and I went to practice. We were the only ones there. But anyway, that's another story for another day. You got to be passionate about this. Not everyone is, and I understand that as well. But here's the deal, okay? You lose that momentum. You lose it. And they can't afford to lose it in this market where the Montreal Canadiens are king 12 months a year, where the Montreal Alouettes have gained some momentum since the ownership change. Things are really starting to look up for them. That's a missed opportunity as well. I want to talk to you about the offense. Everyone's wondering, you know what? Maybe this guy's not good enough. Maybe that guy's not good enough. Jeremy, I don't like the way they play. I've told you this since the beginning of the season.
Well, and they'll probably have 3.5 weeks now if they do want to change something up.
I don't like the way they play. They're predictable, and they've won their games, and they have a winning record at home. And, they find, there's a goal that comes here and there and all that stuff. But the build-up, I find there's no build-up in scoring goals for the most part. I find that they launch the ball up a lot. I find it's not always launched with a purpose. I find sometimes they're just trying to put balls in the air 1, 2, 4, 6, 8 and hope that something sticks. I find that some of the strikers are static and they're standing there, and I don't know if they're asked to or not. I find there's not a lot of crisscrosses. I find there's not a lot of movement. I find there's not a lot of link-up play. I find that there's not one player who's really established himself as an everyday 10. Duke has shown some flashes. Unfortunately for him, he's 1 in 3. I think I'm being fair here that I think we see something from him 1 in every 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of substance, Jeremy.
No. Oh, obviously not. I mean, I've said it many times this year. Unfortunately, a lot of the games were, there wasn't much happening. They were very, very tough to watch. Again, I think on Wednesday night, it was more frustration than anything else. But I think it comes down to skill set, Tony. Losada said it after the game. We're able to compete in every other aspect of the game, but we're not able to score goals. He said it himself. Scoring goals, and this I've said it a million times, Tony, this is the toughest thing to do on a soccer field. And that's the reason why we pay these guys the big bucks, is to put the ball at the back of the net. And Losada said something that's, brutally honest, but is absolutely true. And he said, we have young players that are developing. It's going to take time. Unfortunately, it's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better anytime soon. Or from now till the end of the year. But Tony, he's right.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Whoa. When they score goals, he doesn't talk about young players developing. They score goals, everything's great. When they don't score goals, and we have young players, they're not developing this, that, whatever, blah, blah. This is an excuse. Okay. The excuses are for losers. Listen to me carefully. The way they play, the strikers rarely get the ball. As much as Ofer is not Haaland, as much as Sanusi is not Lewandowski, as much as Toy is not Cristiano Ronaldo. I get all this stuff. I understand what he's trying to say. But it seems like they're rarely in positions to score. It seems like they don't take enough shots. It seems like they're not dangerous enough. Last year, they're a team that had the ball more than the other team almost every game. They wanted the possession of the ball. They would break down defenses. They would get good scoring chances, and the goals would come. And yes, they had Kyoto last year, and this year he's been hurt. I understand that too. This year, I'm going to give you an example. Jules Anthony Vilsaint came into the game last game, with about 40 minutes left in the game or whatever it was, okay?
Yep.
How many balls did he touch?
Maybe 1.
Like he touched a couple. So
no, I'm saying
so
maybe
we gotta get
one decent ball where there was something possible.
So why are players not getting open? Why are players not receiving the ball? Why are the midfielders who have the ball not finding the players in the offensive third? Look, you and I went to a practice earlier today. Okay, we went to a practice earlier today. One practice is not the end of the world. It's probably part of the whole schedule in terms of it was more of a recovery practice. It was more of a lighter practice, this, that, or whatever. It seemed like it was a lighter practice compared to most, right? There was rondos and this and that and whatever and all that stuff. At any point, and I don't go to all the practices, okay? So I'm going to say right now, I don't go to all the practices. You go to some of them. You go to most of them. So I'd have to ask this question. How many shots do they take at practice? Do they take shots with the keeper? How many shots do they take? Do they take shots with both feet? Do they take shots inside the box? Do they take shots outside the box? Do they work transition plays? What do they do exactly? I don't know. Well, but I every time they line up to shoot, it seems like they hit the sky.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm going to give an example of early in the game. There's a break where 0-4 gets a ball on the left side of the park, gets to the box. He tries to deke the defender. Unfortunately, his move didn't fool him at all and then took a shot right on him. I mean, if you are a CF Montreal fan and you've been watching for a long time and you remember how Piatti used to make that move, you're thinking to yourself, we're in two completely different worlds here. And with all due respect to the players that we have in the roster right now, and when when the coach says, you know, we lost a bunch of guys last year who filled up the net, Georgi Mihailovic, Romel Kyoto, and Kai Kamara, he's absolutely right. And we at this moment, we can't name
Jeremy,
a single player on that team that could do what those guys did last year.
Jeremy, I'm going to give some advice today on the Sick Podcast CF Montreal Talk, okay? And I'm going to give it for free, all right? Normally, if you hire a consultant, they charge you for this. They send you an invoice, and you have 90 days to pay them, okay? But because this is the city, the club that plays in the city in which I live in, we're going to give a little bit of free advice today, okay? You have Eddie Sabrango on your coaching staff, okay?
Yeah.
Eddie Sabrango was a striker. Eddie Sabrango had an ability to score goals. As you know, not everyone has an ability to score goals. When you have a player in your backyard that knows how to score goals, you cultivate the player, you play the player, right? And that player can show other players things. You're right. It's a hard thing to do. Coming back, running back to get the ball, to do the work for the mids, beep, beep, pa, pa, beep, beep, pa, pa. Anyone could do all this stuff, okay? At the end of the day, the guys that get paid the most are the guys that put the ball in the net. Capisce do? Okay, so now I have Eddie Sabrango on my staff. I'm Hernan Losada. I have Eddie Sabrango on my staff, okay? I don't have him to teach the other coaches the methodology. I don't have him to follow the methodology. I don't have him on my bench next to me so that he can prepare the team with all the tactics. I don't have him on my bench so he can provide all the tactical adjustments or change formations during the course of a game 2 or 3 times. I have to use him to his strengths. You know what his strengths are? A, teaching the forwards where to run, the timing of the runs, how to get open, how to shoot, and how to score. That's what he knows how to do. That's what he should be teaching my offensive players. The other thing, being a former player and having played in some big games and knowing what it was to be a professional, he's the kind of guy every now and then that can take a player aside, have a chat with them, see how it's going, this, that, whatever. And also when things aren't going well for a player, you know what? Giving them a tap on the back, some positive reinforcement, some encouragement. That's it. So here's my free advice. Every practice, take Eddie Sabrango, take the offensive players, and make every offensive player take 200 shots per practice with the keepers in the net. Left foot, right foot, 6 feet out, 18 yards out, outside the box, inside the box. Shoot, shoot, shoot. And that, my friends, was free advice. The next time, I'm invoicing.
Listen, Tony, if you think that's what it'll take, then that's great.
But it's obvious. Know what I said? If I think I didn't just put a guy on the moon here.
Tony, I don't think that that's where our problem is.
You don't think that it can help that they have a coach who could teach the offensive players where to run, how to make the runs, how to get open, the timing of the runs, kicking the ball and scoring goals. You don't think that can help?
Sure.
Sure.
Tony.
Yeah.
If I want to teach, I want to run a successful podcast.
Broken like the offense.
All right.
Yeah.
And I have a person there who unfortunately has a speech impediment or has a lisp or stutters or whatever. I could practice with him. But if this is a problem that's not going to go away, it's going to be tough to make it happen. You understand what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying?
No, you're wrong. Because you're making it look like every forward on the team has an impediment. They don't. Every forward on the team has strengths, weaknesses. Some have some limitations. But you have to play to their strengths. Do you understand what I'm talking? Don't put the ball in Shinonso Ofer's feet. His feet are not the strongest part of his game. Don't put it ahead of him. So
Tony, if your feet are not your strongest part as a soccer player, maybe you should be doing something else. What do you want me to tell you?
Olfer should get the ball in the air. Vilsain should get the ball on the ground.
But did you see how Kai Kamara scored that goal for Chicago yesterday?
Yes.
The ball's up in the air. He beats the defender clearly with his jump, turns, and completely fires with his head towards the net. Do you see anybody on this team able to do that?
There's something you didn't mention, too. That when look at it very carefully, when he took the leap in the air, his right foot came up so high that it got pretty much close to the face of the defender. So that created the distance. He couldn't get to him, and he headed it in. That was a great goal.
So what do you want me to tell you?
That was that goal. That goal. It was Hollywood.
Fantastic goal.
That goal was Hollywood. It was like a movie
clutch
ending. Yeah.
At the 86th minute, you know, I mean.
All right.
What is it? I mean, you know.
Okay. So now, when your team can't score, and your runs are when everything is predictable, when the way you play is predictable, don't you think that one thing that you can do to counter it is to get a player in the lineup that has some creativity, that has some imagination, that has some swag? I'm going to show you something. Let's bring up two pictures, and I'm going to come back to this now because now I'm starting to get upset. And when I get upset, watch out, get out of the way. Do you understand me? All right. Bring up two pictures of Sean Rea in that game back at the end of May, which I believe was May 27th, if memory serves me well, versus Miami. He comes in, I believe, at the 71st minute of play. They're leading 1-0. And at the 93rd minute of play, Losada calls him over and says, come off, because he wants to make a substitution and kill some time, which was the smart thing to do, to make a substitution and clear and kill some time. Mind you, Rea wasn't happy, just came on at the 71st. What, me? Me? I'm coming off. Are you kidding me? Take a look at another picture. So the coach says, yeah, you, whatever. Reyes, I want no part of you, man. Let me just leave before we get into an argument. So he leaves, goes to the bench. Okay, perfect. Okay. Now, since that game, and now I'm going to put on my glasses here because I even took the time to prepare a graphic, okay, with the help of my man, Sammy Cavallaro at Master Control. I want to bring up this graphic, okay, since that incident. Let's bring it up. Okay. In the 12 games since then, 6 times Sean Rea has not been dressed. 6. 4 times he was on the bench. He never came on. He didn't play. 1 time he was a starter and he played the first 70. And 1 time he came off the bench and played the final 26. So he played 96 out of a possible 1,080 plus minutes. They have a record of 4 wins, 6 losses, and 2 ties. Okay? Let's bring up another graphic. So these are the games that they played. At DC, on the bench, didn't play, 2-2 tie. At Philly, on the bench, played 30 minutes or 26 minutes, that was 3-0 loss. CF Montreal at Vancouver, did not dress, 2-1 loss. CF Montreal versus Minnesota, on the bench, didn't play, it was a 4-0 win. CF Montreal versus Nashville, on the bench, didn't play, it was a 1-0 win. CF Montreal at Charlotte, on the bench, didn't play, 0-0. Versus New York City FC, started at right wing back, played the first 70, they lost 1-0. Versus Atlanta, didn't dress, 1-0 loss. At Chicago, didn't dress, 3-0 loss. Versus Charlotte, didn't dress, 2-0 loss. Versus Puma, didn't dress, 2-2. They won the game on penalties. Versus DC United, didn't dress, 1-0 loss. Okay. So now, 1, 2, 3, 4. The last 5 games, you're going to understand what I'm getting at now, okay? The last 5 games, Sean Rea didn't dress. The last 5.
Mm-hmm.
Hamdi dressed the last 5. He dressed all of them.
Yep.
And Miljevic dressed 4 of the last 5. So we can remove the graphic now. Jeremy Filosa, on this Friday, July 28th, I have a question for you. Why Miljevic and Hamdi and not Rea? Can you begin to enlighten me, please?
Well, listen, the one thing that I'm going to get to your question, but the one thing that I find always surprising, because as you know, I've covered Major League Baseball, NHL, CFL. I've covered a lot of sports. The one thing that I realize in soccer, and I can't really understand why, is that when you're in the coach's doghouse, it can take months until you come back out of it. Why? I don't know.
Because soccer is the most political of all the sports that's out there, to the point where sometimes it's just darn right dirty.
Yeah.
And it bothers me.
So the first thing I would tell you is Sean Rea is a young player making very little money. And I think Lozada is trying to pass a message that as a young player, you play and shut up and do what I tell you. Otherwise, you're not going to play at all. Okay? That's what I read from this. Because as you mentioned.
Whatever happened to age doesn't matter. If you're good enough, you're old enough. Whatever happened to that? Hey, let's put the cards on the table tonight before I break the table. Does Miljevic or Hamdi bring more to the table than Sean Rea? Yes or no?
Well,
when was the last time you saw Miljevic or Hamdi score? When was the last time you saw them assist? Take a look at key passes, Rea superior. Take a look at expected assists, Rea superior. Take a look at expected assisted goals, Rea superior. The last time Miljevic and Hamdi scored was when? What was the last time Miljevic scored a goal for the reserve team? What was the last time he scored?
He scored in a Canadian Championship game last year or whatever it is.
Stop.
Yeah, but listen, the thing is, you got to justify these salaries, right? I mean, you got
to justify the salaries.
Well, these guys are making $500,000-$600,000. They're making $500,000-$600,000. What are you gonna keep them on the bench?
Hamdi's got a guaranteed salary of $598,000 and Miljevic $593,000.
So who's gonna be easier to deal with if you keep Rea out of the lineup? His agent or Miljevic's agent or Hamdi's agent? I don't know. But when a guy's making all that money, that's what it is. I don't agree with this, Tony, at all.
I would hope not.
You can have something happen in the middle of a game, but for me as a man, I think there's a time to say put your cards on the table, and then for the best of everybody to move on. But this is the thing, Tony, that I gotta tell always shocks me in soccer, and this is. With Losada, it was with Nancy before, it was with Remy Gard. All of these coaches, when they put a guy in the doghouse, it's over. Elias Iliadis was starting games at the beginning of the year, catches a red card. We never see him again. So how do you go from being a player hold on. How do you
Iliadis
go from
a player? Not an MLS player. He's not an MLS player.
But was he starting games at the beginning of the year? Okay, so how do you go from a guy who you think is good enough to start a game to being a guy who will never dress again? Now, either you broke your leg and nobody knows it and you're not able to run and kick the ball anymore, or it's something personal. That's it.
All right.
Sean Rea, same thing. At the beginning of the year, he's getting starts. He's coming in as a sub. He's contributing. Then, boom, that incident happens. All of a sudden, we don't see him anymore. Now,
there's something you didn't mention, that at the beginning of the year when he was starting and he was playing, him, Sirois, and Chouanière were the three best players on the team.
Yeah, you're right.
Of course I'm right.
So what I'm saying is...
Christopher Columbus, Roberto Lamerica, it tells me I'm right. Of course I'm right.
The one thing that I would say, that I could say to Lozada that I don't agree with is when you have struggles offensively, you have got to try every single possible combination. And if you're leaving some of the combinations out, then you haven't completely done the work that you need to do, because you never know. One guy can show you something that could change the whole way you think of your team. And as you mentioned, some guys who have offensive qualities have been left aside for weeks on end. And I don't know how that serves anybody. It doesn't serve the club right. It doesn't serve the coach. It doesn't serve...
So hold on a second. What are you telling me here? Stop beating around the bush here.
What am I telling you? I told you.
But when you started telling me about, one is making X amount of money, $598,000 for Hamdi. Yeah. The other one is making $593,000 for Miljevic.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that the coach has these players in the lineup because he has to?
I don't know. I don't know if he has to. listen, why would they have brought in Iliadis? Why would they have brought in Iliadis if clearly the coach is not really enamored with this style of player? They just loaned them out to Ottawa right now. Why has he? Why has he? Okay, but Tony, if this guy is not in the coach's plans, why are you bringing him in? Second of all, if the coach tells you from the beginning, listen, this guy, I'm not so sure he's ready for this caliber of play. Why didn't you loan him out 3 months ago?
I'll tell you what. So now, yes, that I can't answer you why they didn't loan him out 3 months ago. I can't answer that. This is what I can tell you, okay? They want it. They want to have the lowest salary in the league. They want to.
But they already have the lowest salary.
Hold on a second. So then you go out and you need to find some of these players, and if they have a Canadian passport, even better. You need to go out and or an American passport, okay? You need to go out and find some of these players who you can get at low salaries, because you already have some players at higher salaries. So you get to get some of them at low salaries, and you figure, you know what? For 100,000, it works. It works. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Now, clearly, Iliadis was a recommendation from someone who saw him in Greece or has tentacles in Greece, you would think, because I don't think Olivier Renard and Vasily Krementzidis went to Greece to go watch Iliadis play, unless they went on Instat or on Y-Scout or whatever it is, and they saw, okay, we're looking for quick Canadian players, looking for American players, we're looking who could be available in this and that and whatever. Now, Iliadis clearly was not in Losada's plans. We saw it when he picked up that red card. He was in the doghouse ever since. And if we can bring up a couple of tweets of mine over the past couple of days, one yesterday, Losada is not the president of the Iliadis fan club. He doesn't play. So who recommended him to CF Montreal? More Losada plays in League One Quebec without dominating, more his value drops. For the good of his career, he has to leave and fast. I predict a loan to the CPL. Earlier today, I said when I installed myself to start watching training, I didn't see Opoku or Iliadis. I would not be surprised if Iliadis goes out on loan. I'm hearing that Ottawa Atletico is looking for a player of his profile. A couple of hours later, CF Montreal announced Ilias Iliadis is loaned out to Atletico Ottawa. And to that I say, lucky guess.
Okay, listen, Tony. What I'm saying is I don't have a problem with them bringing in a guy that they think is not ready and loaning him out. What I'm saying is, why did it take you all this time to figure that out?
I don't know.
I have no idea. I have no idea. And personally, I got to say, I don't appreciate when a coach takes a player, puts him aside. I have no problem with putting a guy aside for one game. Okay? Teach him a lesson, whatever. That's fine. But when it's been 3 months, what are we doing here? Like, how is this productive to the team? The only way to get players to improve, because that's what we're supposed to be doing, right? We're supposed to be developing players. These guys that are not playing, what's the point of this? Make them skip a game. But after that, slowly but surely, you got to bring them back, or else you're burning them. You're burning them.
But this thing of developing players and the players in the academy, right? Every single interview you do, you start talking about we're developing players. We have homegrowns on des Québécois, l'Académie des Québécois, l'Académie des Québécois, l'Académie, pipi, papa, pipi, papa. Okay? And it's fine. When they play, you can say it. Now you have Sean Rea, who entered this academy. If he wasn't 12, he was 13. He played his youth soccer in St. Leonard. He's been there for I don't know how long. In the last couple of years, he wanted his opportunity when some others have played on this team at 16, 17, 18. He wanted his opportunities. No. You have to leave. We're going to loan you out to the CPL. So they loaned him out the first year. He bit his lip. He did what he had to do. Came back. No. You have to go again. But this time, you got to take it to another level. You got to score more goals. You got to pick up more assists. So he goes there. He scores, 4 or 5 goals. He picks up 9 assists. I think it was a CPL record for assists. He wins the under 21 Canadian Player of the Year in the CPL, the Young Player of the Year award, all that stuff, right? Comes back. He starts the season. He's one of the best 3 players on the team. One of the best 3 players on the team. Scores a very nice goal versus Vaughan where he basically bailed you out because if that team had any finishing, you would have lost to them. Okay, picked up, I think, the man of the match. For me, Rea has delivered one of the best assists of the season, but it was a secondary assist. I forget who they were playing, but he delivered. He got a ball in transition on a counter. He got a ball on the left side with his left foot, and he's a natural righty. He delivered a beautiful long ball of about 40 yards that went in between two players and fell right in front of Kyoto. It's the nicest ball I've seen any player deliver this year. Sean Rea delivered it. Okay? Kyoto, then there was a scramble in the box, and ultimately, I think it was Zachary Brault-Guillard scores a goal. Okay? So now that incident happens with Losada, which, by the way, is not the end of the world. It's a young player who's upset because he's taken off after 22 minutes that he was on the pitch playing in front of family and friends. For me, it's not the end of the world. I'm actually happy that he was upset about coming out. I would have been disappointed if he wouldn't have been upset. Since then, now he hasn't dressed in the last 5 games. For Hamdi and Miljevic, who have done 0 this season, 0 goals, 0 assists, 0 danger whatsoever, 0, 0, 0. For what?
But Tony, this is when the sporting director needs to step in.
He's from here.
Yeah. Well,
and he went to the stadium when he was a kid to watch his team play, and it's his dream to play in front of family and friends. But yet he's being preferred to the guy who played for El Guna and the other guy who played for Argentinos Juniors, and they're giving both of them $600,000 each, and Rea's got to get the 92 because Rea's from here. So hey, don't demand money. You're from here. Yeah, be in our academy. We might bring you up. We might not. If we do, we might play you. We might not. You might play or you might not dress for 5 games in a row. We'll give you 92,000 because at the end of the day, you did your formation over here. We'll give you 90. You're a young player, right? To bide your time. But the guy that we did, we're going to go to Egypt and we'll give him 600,000. He'll deliver squat. He'll be in the lineup for the last 5 games. You sit on the bench because you got upset when you're Jeremy. Come on.
But I understand. Okay, but this is the time for the sporting director to step in. First of all, these players that are making $500,000-600,000 that are not producing, get rid of them. Get rid of them. I don't know how, but find a way, get rid of them. And you got to sit down with the coach and say, these are the projects that we have. This guy here, we want him to play. I understand there was this little issue, whatever, but we want to develop him. So he's got to play. Like at the end of the day, the sporting director, I'm not saying he has to decide on who plays every single minute, but these conversations are happening all the time between the sporting, and he's got to put his foot down.
Well, I would hope so. I would hope so. Hey, 600,000 each.
Yeah.
0 goals, 0 assists. Sign Jeremy Filosa. Sign Tony Marinaro. We'll sit on the bench with pleasure. You give us $300,000 each. You save 600,000. Give it to the foundation. Give it to the foundation.
And we still get 0 goals, 0 assists.
0 goals, 0 assists. Not going to make a difference.
Yeah.
They're not going to score. We're not going to score. They're not going to assist. We're not going to assist. No difference.
Yeah. Well, listen, like I said, I mean, I don't think that, again, we're talking about Sean Rea. Would I like to see him on the field more often? Yes, absolutely. But again, I think, the major problem is these guys that you have in your lineup making $500,000-600,000. If these guys were difference makers, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But they're not.
Okay.
So that's the situation.
Vincent Détouche of TVA Sport a couple of days ago said that he has it on good information that Toronto FC and the Columbus Crew are both very interested in Rudy Camacho, whose contract is up at the end of the season with CF Montreal. A center back, a veteran, a guy who enjoys playing here, who Jeremy had a shaky first season with CF Montreal, but got much better last year and this year. Has been one of the bright spots on the team, one of the best players on the team. When Camacho's not in the lineup, they don't do well. When he is in the lineup, they do a lot better. Now, what can you tell us?
Well, what I could tell is I can confirm some of the information that Vincent Détouche shared, which is that right now there are ongoing talks to try and figure out what his immediate future is. Let's go back to 2 years ago when Camacho was making $800,000. The team thought that salary was too high, and so basically it was a staring match all the way till the end of the year. And finally, Camacho accepted a $300,000 pay cut to stay in Montreal. And a lot of people are saying, well, he accepted that because he got nothing better anywhere else. Listen, maybe he didn't get anything else anywhere else, but he's happy here. And at $500,000 in the MLS, if you're the best central defender on your team, that's a good deal. That's all right. That works for everybody. I know Rudy was very upset after that negotiation because the fact that everything dragged on for so long, he had to send his family back to France because he no longer had working papers here. It was extremely complicated in the middle of the school year and everything. Had to send his wife back, had to send his kids back. Finally signed his contract at the end of January. I know Rudy does not want to go through that again. I know Rudy would have loved to have already an offer on the table to say, listen, Rudy, you're 33 years old, but you're doing great. We're happy with what you've done. You're the longest lasting player that's been on this team, 6 years now. Our players count on you, young players. You're a good mentor, whatever. I mean, I don't think there's anything bad that we can say about this guy. So probably Rudy, seeing that there was nothing on the table and not wanting to be in that same situation again, might have asked the team, listen, is there any way that you can move me now to a team that would like to have me long term? Now, two scenarios. He's trying to become a Canadian citizen. So going to Toronto would be logical. He wouldn't have to start all over the immigration process. Two, going to Wilfred Nancy, with whom he had an excellent relationship. And obviously, probably Nancy would love to be able to count on him and to have him in Columbus. They're probably also offering an extension. But the question that you have to ask yourself is, why is it that this guy, who's possibly the best player on the team right now, as you mentioned, you know, the few times he hasn't started, they've gotten completely obliterated on the field. Why can't they sit down with this guy, a veteran, again, and say, what, how can we find a way to make everybody happy? You happy, us happy, and we move on? Because I think it's very possible. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be a strength on this team. When you have veterans that want to come back, have an interest in coming back, we could think about Wanyama last year. It was extremely complicated. We know what happened with Kai Kamara also. But the one thing that I can think of is that the one thing that they might be upset with is when Kai Kamara was traded, Camacho was very clear, that he was not happy with the way that was handled. And, he didn't shy away from letting it known. And maybe the organization didn't appreciate that and say to themselves, when this guy's contract's up, well, we're going to move on. But can you imagine if Camacho leaves now, he's sold, and they start taking beatings again and miss the playoffs?
Jeremy, I would hope. I'll go back to Rea for a second, and you'll understand why. I would hope that Rea, being upset, being subbed off, and his reaction, the coach doesn't have a grudge. And I would hope that Camacho sending out an Instagram post in support of Wanyama, that the upper management, Kamara, that the upper management doesn't hold a grudge. I would hope, okay?
I really don't know, Tony.
In the coach in Rea's case, it doesn't look good. It looks like because everybody in the city knows, everybody in the province knows, everyone in the country knows, and everyone in the league knows that Sean Rea brings more to the table than Miljevic and Amdi. So then there's something going on, okay? In regards to Camacho, I'm going to shock you now. You're going to fall off your chair. Get ready. All right, maybe you want to put on elbow pads. I'm going to shock you. I don't have a problem that they move him. And I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah.
Because if the objective of this team was to make the playoffs, and once they get in, to surprise and try to go for a championship, then he has to stay here because he's the best defender along with Corbo on the team. He's the general. He's the center back. He's the guy. You hear me? Perfect. But that's not the objective, Jeremy. Unless people haven't been paying attention, the objective is to have the lowest salary possible, to pick up players on loan, on transfers, on GAM money, or if you're going to pay, it's going to be maximum of $1 million. Pick them up young, try to play them, develop them, and sell them to make a buck as soon as possible. That's the objective. So if that's the objective, I have no problem if they trade Rudy Camacho, who's going to be 33, to have Corbo play center back, or have Alvarez play center back, or have Corbo play center back and Alvarez at one point play left center back, or have Thorkelson play left center back, or have Campbell play center back and Alvarez play behind them as a sub. What you understand what I'm trying to tell you? Jeremy, the objective is not to make the playoffs, to get in, to surprise, to try and go for the championship and win the cup. If that was the case, you cannot trade Camacho. I think we lost Jeremy Filosa. We're going to try and get him back. You think he's had enough of me or what? He's had enough of me. He wants out or what? What's the story here? But is it possible that I'm the only one? I'm going to give you a trick to the best Wi-Fi. You go on hardwired. You go directly with the cable. You go in, and that's it. It is the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. I'm Marinaro, and we're trying to get Jeremy Filosa of 98.5 and EMFC. That's Joe back. I believe we have him. Do we? And he's back.
Sorry about that, Tony.
Yeah.
I lost power for just a few minutes there, so
you lost power.
Have to. Yes, and it lasted about 30 seconds.
Okay. Yeah. Now, so you understood what I was saying. Now, the only debate is that do you actually trade him to your arch rival? Do you do that? And that's going to upset some members of the fan base. That's going to disappoint some members of the fan base.
Are you there?
Yes, I am. I was saying the only other drawback at this point after is if you trade him to your arch rival, that's going to upset some members of the fan base. That's going to disappoint some members of the fan base. But Jeremy, you have to do as a club, and this is where I'm going to disagree. You have to do as a club what you believe is good for you as a club. If you want to go with a youth movement, if you want to go with the lowest salaries, if you want to go with young players, you want to play your young players, you want to develop your young players, and you want to sell your young players, Jeremy, at that point, if you have to trade him, you trade him.
I understand, Tony.
But Toronto, you trade him to Toronto.
Yeah, but if that's the one and only objective, why did you re-sign Wanyama for all that money?
It's the number one objective because you want to be somewhat competitive and show some of the. Listen, Wanyama, okay, it's his.
But
last
you know
season,
what,
though, Jeremy? You know Wanyama's not back next year. It's over, Jeremy. It's over.
Well, you know that he has a pay increase next year, right? He's going to be making $2 million next year. So it's 1.6 this year and $2 million next year. So I don't know how they're going to get rid of that contract. And Wanyama is another player that we got to say there's something's up here. I mean, yeah, he was banged up these last couple of games. Trust me, I saw him on Saturday night leaving the stadium. He could barely walk out of the stadium. I think that's one.
Jeremy's jamming up. So I think there's something with the Wi-Fi. Jeremy, you might want to put yourself on data. He was talking about Victor Wanyama, and he was talking about the fact that he was banged up. He was limping out, yeah?
Yeah. So, listen, since that rumor...
Ma dove l'ha trovato sto internet questo qua? But where'd you pick up this internet? A Dollarama? But what are we doing here? But what are we doing here? Is it possible that the only one who goes out to get quality, the one that pays, me, all the time? Cash. Boom. Questa qua jammed up. I lost power. I lost this. I lost that. I'm back. I lost power again, this and that.
Yeah.
I know it's Sammy at Master Control, but where'd you find this guy? Yeah.
Okay. Listen, I turned off my Wi-Fi. Hopefully, it's a big storm outside right now in my house, so things are not great. Okay, so just to say, Tony, since that rumor came out of that of that possible transaction with New England with Wanyama, he hasn't been the same. He hasn't been the same. I don't know if it's, I think, does he feel betrayed? Did he talk to his agent? Did his agent confirm, or did they find out that the team was speaking to New England without speaking to them? I don't know. But something's fishy is going on there also. I got to tell you. It's just not normal.
Jeremy, you know what? Once again, considering what their objective is here and what they're trying to accomplish, they don't need Wanyama back next year. They have Piet.
Well, he's signed now.
I understand that. They have
got a guaranteed contract.
They're going to have Piet, who's going to serve as a mentor to Saliba. And you're going to have Choinière, who's going to be in between them in terms of his age. And those are the three guys they're going to be able to, like, you don't You don't need to spend $2 million on a CDM on a team that can't score.
Yeah,
But this is what I say though. Okay, this is what I say. Okay, what I say is you have your philosophy. We don't have to agree with it. It is what it is. But if you are going to shell out $2 million for one player, but can it be an offensive player?
All right, listen, I agree with you 100%, Tony. But at this point, I don't understand why you re-signed this guy. And now, possibly, I don't know if it's true, if the rumors are true that they were trying to shop him around. I have no idea. But, like, how could you, like, go from one decision where you're giving all this money to a player where you normally don't give anybody this kind of money, and then 6 months later want to get rid of him? I don't understand. But I do agree with you that if I had to choose between which guy I let go right now, there would be no doubt that I would keep Camacho. This is me. It's just me. I don't think Wanyama has a future here. As you mentioned, he might be play this year. Who knows? We'll see for next year. But Camacho's the type of guy, Tony, that you could keep on your team. After he retires, he could join the coaching staff.
That I understand. That I understand. Yes,
the guy is here. He's
I agree with you.
Now. He's a Quebecois. He loves being here.
I like Camacho, Jeremy.
But
Jeremy,
why does it always have to be so complicated? Why?
You don't
the
have
guy
to preach
speaks
to
his
me.
mind. Okay, but because the guy speaks his mind. Because Laurent Sima back then, remember, used to speak his mind. And then at the end of the day, they're like, you know what? He's happy here. He likes it here. He likes the club. He likes the city. Let's keep him around. And they brought him back. And look now, he's an assistant coach on the team. So, once again, and I say this all the time, I don't understand why things have to always be so complicated, especially with guys that you know are happy here and want to stick around. That's just
listen.
me.
What I say is, once again, I agree. He's a very good defender. He's a heart and soul player. He's given everything. You can tell he loves playing for this team and for the jersey and for the fans. But I'm just going to go back and I'm going to tell you that if the objective that is very, very clear to all of us, Jeremy, very clear to all of us.
Yeah.
You pick up young players on GAM money. You pick up players on loan. You pick up young players. If you have to pay for them, you're not paying more than $1 million. You're playing them, you're developing them, you're showcasing them, and then you're selling them. If that's the objective, Jeremy, I got no problem that they trade them. Okay?
Yeah, but listen, but Tony, if you want to develop these guys, they need mentors around them. They need guys who are going to show them the ropes. They need guys who are going to stay with them at the end of practice to show them a couple of little tricks or a couple of things that they're not doing right. It's part of it. It's a.
I hear you. I hear you.
You understand, Tony? I mean, I think the best way to develop young players is to have a balance on your team. This is my opinion, where you have your young players who are developing, where you have certain veterans who are maybe past their prime, but they're there to help out the younger guys that have proven themselves in the MLS, and you know what you have when you throw them on the field, and you got your star players. And that's the way you develop young players. Not by having not by having 4 or 5 projects on the starting 11.
All right, Fernando Alvarez, the Sick Podcast, Tony Marinaro and Jeremy Filosa got the first images of Fernando Alvarez at CF Montreal practice. Not that one. Let's take a look. Well, there it is. He says hello to everybody. You like that one? Hey, Jeremy was walking by. I looked at him. Fernando, una foto. Fernando, una foto. He gave me a smile. Look, he gave me a smile. Yeah, that's nice. He seems like a nice guy. Hello, Fernando.
So it was his first practice session this morning.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of the drills there. I think he was doing some solo work. Yeah, there we go. You and I were the only ones to get it because you and I were the only ones who were there. All right.
Yeah.
There we go.
And who knows? Maybe in the next upcoming month we'll be able to speak to him. Well.
All right. Okay. And so he's doing some solo work. Shortly thereafter, a couple of hours after that, CF Montreal announced his signing.
Yes.
All right. So he's got himself a 3-year deal with CF Montreal plus 2 option years.
Exactly.
And we got images too of Eddie Sabrango. At one point, pulled aside Chinonzo 04. And they're working, as you can see here, detaching from the defender, running to the ball, controlling the ball, head up, and eventually kicking in some of those mini nets. Okay, if we can see here, look at that, look at that. Let's go in the mini net. Goal! All right. If the keeper would be in the net, though, he'd probably save it. I'd rather have him take shots on a keeper instead of on the mini net, but I'm no coach, okay? I'm just a podcaster. That's it. That's who we are. Okay, so tomorrow night, we'll all be watching DC United versus Pumas. It's not complicated. If DC United wins, Montreal is through, and it will mean an appointment at Philadelphia versus the Union.
Yes.
If Pumas wins, Montreal is eliminated.
Exactly.
So Montreal now needs a favor from Hernan Losada's former club, who has not lost a game versus Losada this year and came here and beat Losada twice by a score of 1-0. So they need a favor. He needs a favor from his former club. Pretty odd that you got shut out, by the way, twice by your former club. Like if there was someone who would know your former club like the back of his hand, you'd think it would be you. If there's someone who would know how to break them down and score against them.
And if you remember well, Taxi Funtas missed both of those games. So they lost twice to DC United without their best striker.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? That's what it is.
Yeah. But
and
you know
so
what?
this weekend,
if
Montreal gets eliminated and Team Canada, Women's Team Canada, national team gets eliminated, we won't have much to cover for the next 2-3 weeks.
Here's hoping, my friend, for 2 wins. And let's go with that, and we'll talk to you soon. Because the city needs it, the province needs it, and the country needs it. We need 2 wins. We'll talk to you soon. This was an extended version of the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. You can check us out, subscribe on YouTube channel, and follow us on Twitter at SickPod CFMTL. For Jeremy Filosa of 98.5 FM and EMFC Radio, I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.